With Valentine's Day approaching, the boys from Bull Moose didn't want to just give us chocolates or candy or flowers or something tired like that. No, they came up with a list of the 5 most romantic movies for Valentine's Day. Mick Pratt and Chris Brown with us here. Thanks for coming in. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
Let's get right to the list. And we'll begin with what is, I think, pretty much a lot of people would agree, one of the great romantic comedies of all time, Moonstruck, starring Cher. Let's take a look at a clip.
Now you talk.
I love you.
What?
Snap out of it.
I'm confused.
Cher, and of course I should have mentioned Nick Cage. My apologies for not putting him in the first place. I know you guys would take offense at that. Why do you like this movie so much?
Well, I think Mick probably likes it because of who's in it. But I mean, it's just great all around. But I guess it's sort of It's at the beginning of the 90s rom-coms in a way, like the very first one of sort of a new kind of thing, like the Woody Allen type stuff sort of over. Like that's why it's important, and that's why I think it's still interesting now. It's also well done, and Cher really didn't do enough. Like, we could have used more Cher in everything she wanted to do.
Kinds of movies.
Yeah, for sure.
Terrific performance.
More solo albums.
The whole cast is great. Danny Aiello, Olympia Dukakis, Nicolas Cage. No,
he's great.
Fun movie. Really a good movie. All right, number 4 on your list is Stardust, a movie from 2007. Why do you like this one?
So I like this one because it's kind of like the Pepsi to the Princess Bride's Coke, which is to say it's kind of like a high fantasy rom-com. And you know, Princess Bride gets a lot of credit, totally worthwhile as being like the archetypical fantasy romance movie. But this one is also like really, really good. I mean, some people prefer Pepsi. But just, you know, kind of an underrated gem of high fantasy and whatnot. Witches, stars, oh shoot, what's his name? Robert De Niro is in it as an airship captain. What's not to love about that?
Let's turn to number 3 on the list, which you acknowledge is not a movie that everyone is going to embrace.
If that's Pepsi, this is Moxie.
Okay, good analogy.
It's more like Tab.
It's a film that came out in 2010, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Why might people like or dislike this picture?
Oh, you know, it's so much about, like, well, first of all, there's nothing that looks like it that's actually a movie. But I think the reason it worked, well, Jesus, and it's not a romantic comedy. That's it. I mean, that's why I like it. But this like dorky kid who realizes that he's cool and has to go through all this stuff to get this really interesting woman
for people that like think of things in terms of video games. There's nothing better. Like, and what's interesting about it also is it was written at the same time as the comic book adaptation was written, and so there are elements that are in the movie because they were in the comic, and then there are elements in the comic that were because they were in the movie. So it's a very cool kind of conjoinment of the two concepts.
I didn't quite do it justice in describing this list, because you guys actually, what you were talking about were 5 great underappreciated romantic movies, and that would be one that a lot of people would consider underappreciated. And so is the next one on our list, The Lobster from 2016. Again, this is a movie that's going to divide people. Some are going to think it's really interesting, and others are going to just like stalk out of the room after 15 minutes.
I think if you're from Maine and you heard a movie called The Lobster, and you would have a certain mental image in your head. And
this would be a letdown.
This would not even be not even close. Like, so the plot of the movie, right, is in a future dystopian society. You know, couplehood is really important, and if you become single, you're sent to this hotel, and you're given a certain amount of time to find a partner, and if you don't find a partner, you're turned into an animal. So the protagonist has chosen to be turned into a lobster.
All right. Now let's go to number 1 on your list of underappreciated romantic movies, Shrek from 2001, the first of the Shrek movies.
Yep. Yeah, obviously well appreciated, but maybe not thought of
not as a romantic comedy.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just one of the great animated movies of all time. And in fact, one thing that no one can ever take away from us is that the first time they had an Oscar for Best Animated Picture, Shrek won.
They got it right.
They got it right the first time.
That one is a movie that endures. 2000 is when that came out, and it's still, or 2001, and it still works.
Yeah, still works.
Got to leave it there. Mick, Chris, thank you so much. 5 underappreciated romantic movies for Valentine's Day, and we'll be back in a moment.